The Kansas City Chiefs go back-to-back. They defeat the San Francisco 49ers 25-22 in overtime in Super Bowl 58. We talk about that and so much more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On NFL podcast, your daily NFL podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher. I'm the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here on our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on Locked On NFL, making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes a video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. So be sure to subscribe in video form. Hit that like button. Really helps out. Bring more NFL fans to the show. And then also in audio form, wherever you get your shows, be sure to subscribe there. Follow along there as well. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Prize Picks. The easiest and most exciting way to put daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We are back here Monday. And this is the first week that we are going to be without football. Is yesterday, the Kansas City Chiefs win again. They defeat the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl 25-22 in overtime. It was a really great game. It wasn't shaping up to be that way in the first half, but second half overtime was incredible. Patrick Mahomes wins his third Super Bowl, and we're going to be talking about it all here today on the show. We're going to first talk with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs about the Chiefs and them being a dynasty. I mean, I don't think anybody can debate that anymore. Mahomes said it was a start of one, so we'll talk with Chris about the game, how it went in the dynasty talk there. Then we'll move over with a winner, there is a loser. We'll talk with the 49ers and Locked On 49ers Brian Peacock as we get into just what went wrong for San Francisco and how they can get back next season. Then I'll be taking you through the final part of the show, talking about some off-season storylines in 2024 and what to look forward to as we move into free agency, the draft, and all that fun stuff. So without any further ado, let's first get into our conversation with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs did it again. 2 straight back-to-back here for the Chiefs. They pull out a win in what turned out to be an absolutely incredible game in overtime, 25-22 over the San Francisco 49ers. Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs is here to break everything down. And Chris, I first want to just know what you were going through. I mean, the first half was a little bit of a clunker, but then you get to the third quarter on into overtime, and that was one of the better Super Bowl finishes I think we've seen in a while.
It was fantastic, and I think, man, it felt like my heart was pumping peanut butter. Just that game was crazy. And, you know, you watch the first half and you look at it and you're like, Kansas City's lucky they're only down a score. Like, at this point, there's no reason that they should have even been in the game. And then they were able to do what they were able to do in the second half. And I will say this. They started at the end of the second quarter being able to start to move the ball. Andy Reid started to figure out some things against their defense, and that really helped. But, you know, you look at it and, I mean, that game was just nuts. It went back and forth between both teams. San Francisco lost a ton of players to injury, big names to injury. Deebo Samuel came back and played, but, you know, Dre Greenlaw going out was a huge loss for the Niners, and George Kittle missed some time. I mean, John Feliciano, they're starting right guard, I believe. I mean, it was just, you know, injury after injury after injury for the 49ers. They almost overcome it. They almost were able to overcome it. But Kansas City, you know, what do you have to say? It's Patrick Mahomes, like 4th down and 1 in overtime, and you're sitting there going, they can't possibly run the ball. You saw what happened on 3rd and 1. So you're sitting there going, okay, so they have to throw it, and they have to throw it with the team that has struggled with drops the entire season has to throw it on 4th and 1. Not the greatest thing that you want to be thinking about right then.
Yeah, and I know there had been plenty of late game fails for the Chiefs during the regular season. Now, they had tightened up during the playoffs in that regard. But, Chris, was there a turning point for you in this game where, again, the Chiefs in the first half, it was looking a little dicey. But then I think special teams was a huge factor where the Chiefs just had such an advantage. I mean, Jake Moody misses the extra point, and, you know, that was blocked. You have the fumble where the ball on a punt hits a 49ers player. The Chiefs recover and then obviously score quick with MVS. How big of an advantage was special teams for the Chiefs, especially considering Harrison Butker broke the field goal record in the Super Bowl that Jake Moody set a couple minutes earlier?
Right, 57 yards, and it probably would not have been good from 59. But I did see somebody say that he made one from 69 yards before the game started. So he had the leg, but the snap was bad, so the kick didn't get off the way he wanted it to. That guy's got a humongous leg. I mean, you go watch what he does on kickoffs. He hit the crossbar on the kickoff. On I don't know if it was on the ensuing kickoff or just a kickoff shortly after that, but it was ridiculous. He does it it seems like every single game he hits the crossbar or puts it through the uprights. I mean, that's even more ludicrous. You watch this game, and I think the turning point was really the turnover that Ray McLeod had. And it wasn't I know it wasn't his fault because he did what he had to do. Hit his player. He has to go get the ball. I didn't see that on first watch. So that was a little surprising to me. And then they go show the replay. He has to try to cover that ball. So he made the right play. He just wasn't able to bring it in. And Kansas City went for the throat right away. I mean, first play right afterwards. And who catches the first touchdown for the Chiefs? Guarantee you, I would have been betting money on MVS. There's no way.
It's been a story all season for the Chiefs of unsung heroes stepping up here. Obviously, MVS was the guy who sealed the AFC Championship against Baltimore just a few weeks ago with that long completion. But how do you think the defense was able to do against San Francisco? Brock Purdy goes 23 of 38 for 255, only one touchdown. I mean, one of the 49ers touchdowns was on that trickeration play from Juwan Jennings to Christian McCaffrey. The defense kept the Chiefs in this game while the offense sputtered early, and then the offense took it home at the end.
Well, and I just want to point this out. The bigger thing to me wasn't they held him to that many. It was that they held Christian McCaffrey to 60 yards running. I mean, maybe 70 yards somewhere in there. I mean, it was just ridiculous when you look at what McCaffrey had at the end of the day. I mean, it seemed like he was running the ball and they were consistently getting 5 or 6 yards a game, but they were able to stop him when it mattered, and that's all that really matters. I mean, they got it done when it mattered at that point, and keeping him under 100 yards. That's what I said in the game. I said if he gets 75 yards or so, pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah, and to me, I think it's with the other guys stepping up. You talk about guys like Mecole Hardman, who obviously had 2 huge plays in this game, a deep shot and then the touchdown to win it. Justin Watson had a couple plays, Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce was the leader here, 9 receptions for 93 yards. Chris, we did see an altercation. Well, I say altercation between him and Andy Reid on the sideline early in this game. Was that anything to you? And were you worried that, the Chiefs were getting too frustrated at that point?
I think that Kelce was pissed off because he wanted to be on the field at that time. And really quick, McCaffrey had 80 yards. I apologize. 22 carries, 80 yards, under 5 yards a carry. That is fantastic for the player that he is and for this Chief defense who's struggled against the run all season long. The deal with Travis Kelce was Pacheco fumbled the ball when he came out. The guy that was blocking the guy that forced the fumble would have been the guy that Travis Kelce was blocking. If he would have been in on that play, he felt like he wasn't going to be, he would not have let the guy get the fumble. Force the fumble. So I get it. I mean, you hate to see it because it is a situation where you don't want to see one of your players going at the head coach, especially somebody that has a great relationship with Reid. But I'm sure that they're past it and it's not going to be an issue. I'm sure there's probably going to be words about it later, but I don't think they're going to care. And Kelce made it very clear he's back for next year trying to get a three-peat.
Yeah, very, very clear. He was fired up on that podium when the Lombardi was being presented there. Now, with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, we have to talk about him, Chris. 34-46, 333, 2 touchdowns with the interception there as well. The late game execution, the late down execution, him on 4th down, that big run to pick up a first in overtime. I mean, what did you see out of him? I mean, we've seen everything from Patrick Mahomes, right? You've seen everything. But what was this performance as you were watching it to you in terms of his all-time up there for you?
One of my favorite guys that I ever got the opportunity to actually talk to was Terez Paylor. And one of his favorite talks, he passed away a couple of years ago before the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers. But one of the things he always talked about with Patrick was that Patrick had moments where it was an over my dead body type game. And that's exactly what this was. Mahomes just looked at it and said, okay, over my dead body, am I going to lose the Super Bowl? And he just went out there and took over and did exactly what needed to be done. I mean, the fourth down run, I mean, that was great. But then a couple of plays later, and maybe even the next play, he runs for 15, 20 yards. It just out of nowhere. And I mean, he's still, and this is the crazy thing to me, he is the Chiefs postseason rushing leader in their history.
That is incredible.
Pacheco was only like 10 yards behind him, but he beat Pacheco by 7 yards in this game. So he's still outrushing Pacheco in postseason history in the Chiefs for the Chiefs.
To me, he does so much for them, and he has done so much. And now we're talking about a 3-time Super Bowl champion in Patrick Mahomes. Yep. Now, I know that Kelsey wants to three-peat. They're going for it, but I think now we can start the D word, Chris, dynasty. We've been kind of soft launching it throughout the course of the year here, and I think we all knew we'd be talking about it if they got to this moment. What does it mean for the dynasty here? I know everybody's talking about that Patriots team and what Belichick and Brady did, but what can you say about Mahomes and Reed and what they've done?
If you go look at what Nick Wright talked about, Mahomes is actually ahead of Tom Brady's pace. 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. They win, they win 3 of them. I mean, it's unheard of. And so you're in a situation where you got a guy that is going back to back or going, back to back after winning one a couple of years ago against the same Niners team. And you're looking at a situation where there were so many things that went wrong for this Chiefs offense this year. I would be scared if I was the NFL, and I know this is going to sound cocky. I would be scared if I was the NFL because Kansas City is going to make adjustments at wide receiver. They're going to get better at that position, and Mahomes has the ability to give them enough money to sign Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed and bring back whoever they need to, and maybe go out and get a number 1 wide receiver before they even get to the draft. This is going to be a team that is going to be poised to repeat again next year.
Congratulations to the Chiefs. They earned it. And they're a team that now we have to talk about them as a dynasty. I think there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. For more on Chris's work, check him out over at the Locked On Chiefs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up with the second part of the show, we'll take the other perspective here and talk with Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers about San Francisco's loss. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about on the show. First, this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And if you want to play along with some of Prize Picks' favorite players, though, Rapid Meat Milling, Community Andrew Schultz, you can now find the community plays on the promos tab of the app to view and just some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Obviously, no more football, but I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan. So looking at basketball, it's very safe to pick Nikola Jokic and picking him to go for more than anything he has over on Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. Is that easy? We're back for our second segment of Locked On NFL. Kevin Oestreicher still here talking with you. The day after the Super Bowl, Kansas City beat San Francisco in Super Bowl 58, 25-22 in overtime. We talked with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs about the winning side. When I get the losing side's perspective, Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers joins us to talk about everything that went wrong with San Francisco and how San Francisco can get back here next year. Let's talk with Brian now. The San Francisco 49ers on the losing side of the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs again. This time 25-22 in overtime. Kansas City pulls it out with a game-winning touchdown right before hitting double overtime. Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers here with me to break down everything from the 49ers side of things here. Brian, seemed like the Chiefs were kind of lucky in the first half to be as close as they were. It felt like that was a 49ers half, and then the Chiefs come out in the second half and they get the job done, send the game to overtime. Some special teams mistakes end up getting the Chiefs the ball in good positions and taking some points off the board for San Francisco. What do you chalk it up to as to why San Francisco couldn't get the job done here?
I mean, you led with it. And there was the story of the game. The 49ers should have been up, 14-0 after the first quarter, and it was a 0-0 score. And I know that and Patrick Mahomes is great and not taking anything away from him, but the easy storyline is Patrick Mahomes goes and wins. He's the greatest of all time, and he goes and wins the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the story is that the 49ers allowed the Chiefs to hang around and gave Patrick Mahomes, that quarterback who is great, a chance after chance after chance after chance. And eventually, he did beat him in overtime, but it should have never come to that. The 49ers should have been up so big. They were dominating that game up front, and they shot themselves in the foot multiple times, and it was their star players that did it. Christian McCaffrey fumble and Trent Williams with a couple of gaffes on the second drive. You come away with 0 points on both of those drives, and then a muffed punt and a blocked extra point, and this thing was tied, right? So 1 point is all it would have taken for the 49ers to not be tied going into overtime. And eventually you give Patrick Mahomes that many chances, and he's going to make a play. But to me, Patrick Mahomes going and winning the Super Bowl wasn't the story of the game. It was the 49ers allowing the Chiefs to hang around, and it started with the first drive of the game.
And I saw on social media, Brian, and Tony Romo talked about it a bit too. Some of the play calling that was going on for the 49ers, and you heard Romo on the broadcast saying, run the ball here, run the ball here, run the ball here. And the Chiefs did a decent job of shutting down Christian McCaffrey for the most part, 3.6 yards per carry and 3.5 as a team as a whole for San Francisco. But what's your assessment of what Kyle Shanahan and the offense did, particularly with the play calling?
And that's why my biggest key, and I talked about it all week on Locked On 49ers, the biggest key to the game was that chess match between Kyle Shanahan and Steve Spagnuolo. I think they're the best offensive and defensive coordinators in the NFL. And Steve Spagnuolo got one over on Kyle Shanahan 4 years ago in the Super Bowl, and he might have done it again. And it comes down to when Steve Spagnuolo is so good at making you do what he wants you to do as an offensive coordinator, using your rules against you. So Steve Spagnuolo knows that up front he's getting killed, and so his strength is in his secondary. So what does he want you to do? He wants you to throw the ball because he believes that his guys can lock your guys up. So what are you going to do? You're going to show a look that makes you do a box count and say, I'm going to call a pass play here because I'd be crazy not to, because that's what I should do against this look. And what does Steve Spagnuolo do? He says, well, look, I know you're going to do that because I planned on making you do that. And so I'm going to go give you the look that I want to give you because I know I made you do the thing I wanted you to do. And I believe in my guys on the back end. And then we're going to give you some pressure looks and we're going to get out of here and we're going to get the ball back again. Whereas even if you were only averaging 3.6 yards per carry, it might still behoove you to run into a heavy box if you're the 49ers. And they didn't do it in 2019, January or February of 2020 Super Bowl. And they got into that a little bit again in this one. And I think you do have to chalk one up to Steve Spagnuolo once again. But again, I don't want to reduce anything to Kyle Shanahan got out-coached. Brock Purdy got outplayed at quarterback because Patrick Mahomes is so much greater than him. That's why the 49ers lost. It's not why the 49ers lost. The 49ers lost because Christian McCaffrey fumbled on the first drive because they gave up opportunities to score and put the Chiefs away early. And when you let those guys hang around, you're going to lose the game. And it would have happened against lesser quarterbacks and lesser coordinators if you do those types of things. And that's what happened in this game, unfortunately, for the 49ers, even though I think they were the best team out there on the field and were the better team for most of the almost 70 minutes of play.
Right. And I know exactly what you're talking about with Steve Spagnuolo because he did it just a couple weeks ago to the Ravens.
He was like, hey, that was what I was preaching all week long. Hey, Kyle, don't do the things that don't do the thing the Ravens did where they only ran the ball 6 times or whatever it was all game long, right? Like you're playing into their hands. And look, chalk it up. Steve Spagnuolo is really good at what he does. And at a certain point, you have to take the game into your own hands, play your game, and don't let the other team dictate what you're doing. And Kyle Shanahan is normally so good at that. He uses the defense's rules against them because he knows what you're going to do. And that's what makes Steve Spagnuolo so great as a defense coordinator as well.
Yeah, incredible. And you mentioned Brock Purdy there, Brian. It's 49ers threw the ball a lot, 38 times here. Mahomes actually threw 46, but 23 of 38 for Brock Purdy, 255, had the one touchdown. Juwan Jennings also got on the board with a passing touchdown of his own to Christian McCaffrey there. But how would you assess how Brock performed? Because I think he made some good throws, had some scrambles, but there were some overthrows, overthrew a touchdown to Deebo Samuel. What grade would you give Brock?
I thought Brock was fine. I mean, Brock was good. He didn't turn the ball over. If you showed me that box score before the game, I said, yep, that's the box score the 49ers win the game with. He completed A good percentage of his passes, 255 yards, no interceptions, 1 touchdown. You look at the other side, Patrick Mahomes did have an interception. Be like, yeah, there we go. 49ers win the Super Bowl, right? Nope, that's not what happened in this game. So, look, Brock could have been better. He missed a couple plays. But again, I think there wasn't as many guys open when you go back and watch that tape as you might expect. So it's really, really hard for me. And my co-host Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers, we went back and forth a little bit post-game on that. I think Brock Purdy's one of the last guys you're going to point your finger at is why the 49ers lost this game.
Yeah, I mean, and that Chiefs secondary is up there with one of the best, if not the best in the league, with McDuffie and Edwards and Justin Reed and all those guys. Jay Sneed, obviously, too. But then you look at the defensive side of the ball, Brian, and the 49ers, they had to deal with a very costly injury very early in this game with Dre Greenlaw going out. One of the freakiest injuries I've seen in a long time with him running onto the field. It's not confirmed yet, but it's all but confirmed as an Achilles injury. That's a big loss for San Francisco, especially in the middle, or at least towards the beginning of the biggest game of their year with how good he's been. How did the 49ers respond to that, and just how big of a loss was it for?
I could feel Dre Greenlaw's presence from the first snap of the game. The guy's a maniac, and he plays with so much energy. And maybe that was a little bit deflating for the defense for him to go out of the game so early. And, non-contact injury, just running on the field, and has the Achilles injury. They're pretty sure it's an Achilles. You don't come back in the game. I think that's a pretty clear sign that this could be a bad Achilles injury. If it's a torn Achilles, that's going to take him out of, who knows, maybe training camp, 6, 7, 8 months, probably at the minimum for him. So that could impact his 2024 season as well. And I mean, he's a guy that 49ers players really rally around. He's a really good player in the NFL, probably somewhat underrated, can run and hit and cover so much ground on defense. And he's a high energy player, and the 49ers feed off that as well. And the defense played so well, and they were ridiculously good early in the game when he was on the field. And I don't want to say that he's a big reason why they lost the game or anything like that, but I think they did feel his loss in the second half for sure.
Yeah, and the 49ers have been so close now these 2 years that they've played the Chiefs and lost in the Super Bowl. What's the offseason checklist for San Francisco, and how can they ensure, at least give themselves the best chance to get back here next year?
Yeah, so you go poke around, see if Patrick Mahomes is available. If he's not, then maybe you probably start at right tackle. I do think the 49ers have some work to do on both lines, and they always want to be strong there. Colton McKivitz, I think, was kind of a 1-year stopgap starter after losing Mike McGlinchey in free agency. And the 49ers have a late first-round pick. It's a really good offensive tackle class. I think they might look there in the draft to find their right tackle of the future, who knows, might eventually have to flip over to left tackle when Trent Williams decides to hang it up. Hopefully that's not this offseason. Chase Young's a free agent who they traded for. And I don't believe they will. He had played a really good game, and he was motivated here. And, motivation's kind of been a problem for him. Maybe if he's back on the cheap, I don't see them spending a lot of money on bringing him back. So that's still a need, and they love to spend money on the defensive line. So that's always a place that the 49ers are going to go. But it's a bleak situation for the 49ers when you look at rebuilding and retooling, because this was a great shot. They were a good football team top to bottom. And you start looking around like, what are they going to get? Better running back play? No. Going to get better receivers? Probably not. You're not going to probably get a better quarterback. You're not going to change at all. You hope that Brock Purdy maybe just develops a little bit more. And, was in his second full season as a starter. You would think he might be a little bit better, but he's not all of a sudden going to walk into training camp 6'5" and have a laser show of an arm either. So it's hard to envision how much better the 49ers were going to be, because their team was already so good, and this was a really good chance for them to go win the Super Bowl, and they fell a little bit short.
Rough way for the 49ers season to end. For more on Brian's work, check him out over the Locked On 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up with the final part of the show, I'll be taking you home. We're going to be talking about the biggest 2024 offseason storylines, AFC teams, NFC teams, whole lot coming up here on Locked On NFL. First, this show is sponsored by DoorDash. And seriously, what a Super Bowl that was. What a football game that was. But as usual, the commercials, they did steal the show a little bit in my book. DoorDash went all out for game day, and DoorDash stuff from all the ads, the One Lucky Winner, car snacks, even some tax software in there too. And somehow they pulled it off. I'm a little bummed I didn't win it, but I got to hand it to them. it was one heck of a delivery. DoorDash is the all-in-one app for your everyday needs, from restaurants and groceries to flowers and gifts. So next time you're running low on dinner ideas, pet supplies, or just even time, you can get so much more than you realize delivered. Whatever watch party or anything party you've got coming up, get it delivered with DoorDash. Football season may be over, but we're in the thick of basketball games, a school year, and let's face it, winter as well. I can give a million reasons daily to order DoorDash. Hop on the app and make your day a little easier. You can get dinner for tonight, groceries for the week, or a consolation prize for your sad friends in San Francisco if you're a San Francisco 49ers fan, all on DoorDash. DoorDash, your door to more. Head to the DoorDash app to get everything you need delivered. We're back rounding out Locked On NFL here. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you on this Monday. Really appreciate you tuning in and making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. If you're Locked On NFL every day, or really appreciate you tuning into the show. If it's your first time into the channel, welcome in. First time into the show, welcome as well. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back to the show. We're 5 days a week of NFL content, even in the offseason. And we're going to be talking about 2024 offseason storylines now, because we're going to be talking about it all offseason on Locked On NFL. I think it's going to be somewhat of a crazy offseason. I mean, just thinking about the big storyline here, which I think you got to give credit here to Kansas City. We talked with Chris Clark in the first segment about it, where the Chiefs are a dynasty now. And Patrick Mahomes said it's the start of a dynasty. Travis Kelce, very vocal about going for a three-peat next year, be their fourth Super Bowl title together. Who's going to stop Kansas City? I mean, what team in the AFC has a chance to dethrone them? Or in a Super Bowl, what NFC team can beat them? I mean, it's almost like when we were talking about the Patriots, where it's like it's the Patriots until it's not. And now it's the Chiefs until it's not, right? We had that conversation. So who is it going to be? And how can you build? Because Chris told us in the first part of the show that, oh, well, Kansas City can maybe bring back Chris Jones on L'Jarius Sneed and maybe add a big-time wide receiver. I mean, that's dangerous considering Kansas City's offense was not up to the snuff we had seen from them. So that's a big storyline for me. Obviously, we talked with Brian in the second segment about San Francisco and them still being the class of the NFC. But how is Dallas going to respond? How is Philadelphia going to bounce back? Is there an up-and-coming team that's going to maybe take the league by storm? Is Seattle that team? Or you may be looking at another team that could come in the NFC South that could be something. That South division has been kind of iffy. Are the Falcons going to get a quarterback? So the NFC has a bunch of different storylines too. You also have the Lions, right? The Lions made the NFC Championship game, and they're a team that's buzzing with potential. And then we saw so many quarterback injuries this year, especially in the AFC. Joe Burrow goes down. Deshaun Watson, although Joe Flacco played better than Deshaun Watson did. But still, Justin Herbert goes down. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, and there were so many injuries at the quarterback position where you just kind of wonder, right, about, well, how are the Bengals going to bounce back? What's T. Higgins going to do? The AFC North is going to be super, super competitive again. But then Jim Harbaugh coming to Los Angeles, how is that going to impact the Chargers? In the AFC South, Houston with C.J. Stroud. You have Anthony Richardson. That's another quarterback that got injured. Anthony Richardson coming back for the Colts. Trevor Lawrence and I think you look at Tennessee with Will Levis. That division is going to be really interesting. And then you look at maybe the quarterback carousel we're about to go through here. What happens with Russell Wilson? Does Kyler Murray go on the move? Kirk Cousins is a free agent. He got injured. Is he going to come back? And is it going to be with Minnesota on a 1 year type of deal there? How is that going to look about some of these bigger name quarterbacks that could be on the move? Obviously, you look towards free agency, and there are a lot of quality names that could be changing hands. And then obviously in the draft, what are the Bears going to do with that number one pick? Are they going to draft Caleb Williams? Are they going to trade Justin Fields? That's another huge situation and huge storyline out there. And for teams that are looking to fill out their rosters, especially with all these big-time quarterback contracts we've seen, even last offseason, right? Lamar Jackson gets his, Jalen Hurts gets his, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So with those quarterback contracts, you have to start, if you're those teams, if you're Baltimore, Cincinnati, Philly, Los Angeles, the teams that already have quarterbacks on big contracts like that, the teams that have to decide on quarterbacks that could get a contract here. How are you going to hit on those late round picks, sign those veteran free agents? Those are really big ones to me. So many different ways to approach this offseason if you're talking about biggest storylines. And of course, we'll have all of that for you here on Locked On NFL as we continue. I mean, again, the season might be over, but we're doing 5 days a week consistently here on Locked On NFL. So be sure to subscribe and follow along in YouTube and audio form. It's the same show, both audio and video. That's all I have here today on Locked On NFL. Thanks so much for tuning in. Come up tomorrow, more NFL content with your Tuesday host. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NFL.